Today, I want to kick off our conversation about unblocking your diverse leadership pipeline. Bit of a mouthful,
yes.
But I feel that it's coming up time and time again with the senior leaders and CEOs who I'm speaking to and working with. And let me say a little bit more about this before we start talking. I'm hearing and seeing that we've got organisations that I think we're all working with who are committed to inclusion. They understand and accept and want to see diversity across the organisation. They want to see that their senior leadership represents the staff and people and communities, businesses they serve. But they're seeing a real challenge, the real problem in, yes, we're seeing diversity and more of our underrepresented groups in the organisation, but we're not seeing them at senior leadership level. Okay. Or if we are seeing them, they're not staying. Let me just be clear on who am I speaking about when I say diverse senior talent or underrepresented groups. This could be women, women leaders working in a very male-dominated industry or environment. This could be our ethnically diverse senior leaders working in majority white senior leadership teams. This could be our younger leaders, our emerging leaders, our Gen Z, progressing at a really fast pace, rapidly growing through the business. So we see that businesses want to grow and continue developing their talent, but we're also seeing the other part of this problem where senior leaders are leaving. So our senior leaders who are underrepresented are leaving. If I was to quote the McKinsey Women in the Workplace report, there's a big thing in that report about women leaders leaving at a higher rate than ever, because I think there is more confidence now in, if this isn't right for me. And I know Tacita, we spoke in the previous episode about culture, if the culture isn't right for me, if this isn't meeting my needs, I'm moving on. So there's a real conundrum, I think, boiling up there. And I really wanted us to be able to unpick some of that today and to speak about and have a conversation about what can organisations do to unblock that diverse leadership pipeline, to stop that cliff edge from happening, to really not only grow, not only attract, Christina, I want to probe you a bit about that, but actually nurture and keep and retain that talent so it does get into the senior leadership team. So I've said a lot there to kind of kick us off.
I like it.
Tacita, if I come to you first, what comes to mind when I'm sort of getting into that?
As a HR professional, I can see the gaps. I can see how it happens and how it's happened over time. And I can see how it's not an easy challenge to fix because you are unpicking years of, well, this is the way it is, or years of, well, that's how I got there, as opposed to what can we do differently today, dynamically, radically, in companies that are traditional in their makeup. They just are. They have the hierarchies traditional, the entry, the price of entry to get into all of the roles are traditional. You have to serve and earn your stripes in this way to get to this management position, to get to this. And it's very, very almost like snail pace. And what I'm hearing now more than ever is shake it up, change it, or I'm going to go. And if you promise me it's going to change and I join you and it doesn't, I'm going to leave. So I think that for the companies that want to do something different and are brave, are ready to tear up the rule book and start again, let's have the conversation, let's go. But just be aware that if you're not willing to do that, what's going to happen? And we see in the reports, we see it on the news, we see everywhere that people aren't going to stick around. And the biggest detriment will be that the people that you want to stay won't, and the people that you don't want to stay will. And that will erode culture, it will erode engagement, it will just erode. And there'll be somebody around the corner, quite commonly the people that left you, that'll set up and do something similar. Or there'll be people in your organisation that are beating a drum and they'll quit and stay, is what I find. They'll just quit, but they'll stay because you're fulfilling 50, 60% of what they need. And actually, in the greater scheme of things, I'll just stay and put up with that rather than be part of that force for change.
Christina.
Monique, so I love that you're calling them underrepresented leaders because I think, so controversially, my business, my organisation, we're moving away from the terminology of diverse, of diverse leaders.
Yes.
Because I want to take this back to COVID. So COVID was a huge leveller for us. If we think about, it was a unique point in history where everybody was in the same boat.
Yes.
And actually the common threat that we had, that everybody felt vulnerable to, was C-19, it was COVID-19. And it meant that we met each other as humans. So there was a real kind of elevation of consciousness at that time. So it didn't matter what you looked like, race, colour, age, everybody felt they didn't sit outside of the grasp of COVID and what could happen to them from an impact perspective. So there's something that we can learn from that when we think about talent. And at the moment, I feel like we've completely over-indexed on thinking about underrepresented communities, diverse leaders, and it's creating a them and us in organisation structure. So we're not bringing majority groups along with us. So what we then hear is, so my husband, straight, white, middle-aged, like the demographic of, right now that feels like they are irrelevant. And actually, from a recruitment perspective, there is a feeling of extinction around it. And so I feel that fear every day when I'm speaking to incredible candidates and they're like, yes, but because I'm a straight white guy, I'm no longer relevant here. And so there's a defensiveness. So people are sticking their heels in, and it's like, if I'm giving to another, it means less for me. There has to be something around this where we're meeting each other as the best minds on the planet, talent as leaders who are going to innovate, create. So moving on from that deficit model of let's fix the women, let's fix the brown people, let's fix the cultures that are sustainable, that will grow, that people will want to naturally gravitate to. Diversity will be the golden thread of everything that they do. And actually, they're really dialing up inclusion and belonging instead of looking at sole groups.
I am hearing the word inclusion used more. So especially when we're delivering training, they don't want it to be referred to as just like DE&I, they want inclusion. My worry in that is that we're forgetting, or we could forget easily and not have a focus on the underrepresented groups if we just start saying inclusion. And so that's my worry there, is because there are protected characteristics that need support, and they need to be, yes, include, they need to belong, but we need to ensure that we are front of mind when hiring, when engaging, when whatever we're doing, that we still do have that lens on what are we trying to include. So I get what you're saying, but I worry when we start changing it. And it's a bit like my profession. We're called HR today, we're all called people today, we're all called personnel. Call it a can of paint. We're trying to do the best for people. So when we start focusing on changing the label of what it is, some organisations will get lost in the, well, what do we call it? No, what we're trying to do is ensure that we have in this organisation a representation of those that are around us, the world, our communities that we serve, a bit to what you were saying before, rather than getting hung up on what we're calling it today. So that's and I've seen that in some clients. It is what it is, yes, but let's never forget that we are trying to, we're on a mission to ensure that we have what it is you're talking about and bringing people along. I get that.
I agree. And that's exactly why I started off saying that I love that we're calling it underrepresented, because there still absolutely has to be that focus. Because what we are seeing, to your earlier point, Monique, is that at the senior leadership, at the top of the tree, at the top of the house, it is not reflecting community. And fundamentally, that's what we want. So by using that language, that terminology of underrepresented, I think the one kind of watch out for me is when we say diverse. Not everybody feels like they identify as diverse.
100%.
And that's where we lose majority groups, when they're primarily the buyers, they're our allies, and we need them to understand why it's so important to have underrepresented groups within our business.
And what I see, and I know I really see it, what I do see is the word diverse used in the wrong way, and it really annoys me.
So let's unpack it a little bit. So terminology, you can get lost a little bit in it, but I think if I unpack the points that I heard from you both, I think what I heard there is about the two elements of it. So I heard you calling out there, Christina, we've had a lot of over-indexing on what we describe as underrepresented groups. So seeing that they're the problem, they need help, they need support. How do we, so development programs galore, are they a bad thing? I don't think we're saying they're bad, but they're only one side of the coin. Yeah, so I think what we're saying, and what I heard from you both, is about helping leaders to be ready. So when you're talking about underrepresented groups and you want them to come into organisations and the organisation wants them here, actually, what's our work and how do we work to support them to be ready because you're stepping into a space where, I know you use the term only lonely, right? You can be the only lonely because the culture isn't ready yet. It's not diverse enough yet. It's not different enough yet. You might be the only one. So we're not throwing that out and saying don't do it, but it's only one side of the coin, right? The other side, what you're speaking about here, and what you were touching on there, Christina, is about, you're hearing from those who are classed as the majority saying, I feel excluded now, or I don't feel important now. But I think there's a balance of power playing out there. And when I do hear people who are in the majority, for whatever reason they're in the majority for, saying that, I think, well, if you're good enough, you'll have work. Because I think there's something here about equity. And that's what I feel is important. Whatever we call it, whatever we describe it as, the nub of it is that people feel they have equal opportunity to progress. Yes. And I think that is the measure that I speak to all organisations to say about, do you know the answer to that? And I know it's a qualitative measure. And I know when we're in the boardroom, we usually want to give me the stats, give me the quantitative stuff, give me the performance. But actually, do you know if everyone across your organisation feels they have an equal opportunity to progress? So it's not about the majority feeling like they don't, and it's not about those who are underrepresented feeling like they don't. Everyone should feel that. But those in the majority, there may be feelings that you're experiencing now that your underrepresented colleagues have felt all the time. Yeah. And that's why people talk about, I have to work twice as hard to be seen, to be heard, etc. So I think there's something there in understanding your equity barriers, understanding what they are, understanding how you can remove those. And I think that's where organisations are getting stuck. I know what my problem is, but where are my barriers? Where are the ones I can see? Yeah. And where are the ones I can't see? Where are the ones that are systematic? Your policies, your systems, the hierarchy, like what you were speaking about before, Tacita. But where are the ones that are individual? And actually understanding what support, or understanding the need, because support may not be, you need a program. Support may be, I want some individualized safe space to explore my own leadership capabilities, qualities, or to understand how I navigate those challenging conversations. It's not there's something wrong with me. No, and I think that's what sometimes is that rhetoric, isn't it? There's something wrong with the people who are underrepresented. Absolutely.
And I think that that's where the opportunity sits for me. So I'm speaking specifically about the majority community because this is not new to us. So us thinking about the programs, how we're elevating Black, ethnically diverse talent, women, this isn't new, but it's still a problem. And so that's why my conversation is now, we've got to work with majority groups, because what they see are targets. What they see are the programs. And it's like, but what about me? I'm being left behind. So the opportunity sits with our services, with Tacita, your training, Monique, your coaching, helping. And what we do as a recruitment business and, diverse consultancy, it's about taking them on the journey. Because you're so right, half of those who do sit in the majority community don't know why we say we've got to work twice as hard. They've not lived it, they've not walked it. And so what organisations are trying to do at the moment, what I see is this is the metrics, this is a stat, by 2030 we're going to be 40% ethnic diverse, 50-50 women, X, Y, Z. And they're like, wow, this is happening to me. This is happening to me. And I'm being told that I've now got to hire with shortlists which comprise of X amount of Black individuals or women. This is great, but what does this mean for me? And so for me, there's the educational piece that comes with culture transformation, that some organisations are doing it and doing it really well. But I think for the large part, there's still a lot more storytelling that needs to be done and bringing people along.